if you're following the news at all, you know there's been a lot of tension in Charlotte, and there's been a lot of racial tension. And I think it's awesome when you come into church and you see the diversity that we see on this stage this morning. I think church is a place where men and women of different races and different backgrounds, etc., can come together and be safe and respect one another and love one another and stand before God as equals. And that is what the church is supposed to do. Isn't it crazy that a black man and a white man can stand shoulder to shoulder and sing to a Jewish man? Isn't that awesome? And that's what the church does, right? And so I love the fact that that happens. That's one of the things we've said consistently. We want to be a place where Sunday looks like Monday, where there's diversity. But the difference is it's a place where we stand together as brothers and sisters in Christ, looking at Jesus, becoming more like Jesus. And so I'm grateful for the opportunity to be in a room today where it's safe and there's unity and there's love and there's harmony. So it's a beautiful thing, and I think that's the power of the church, and that's what Jesus wants to do in our lives. So very good. Well, let me just say this. This is kind of just on my own. Do you guys remember when you went to church? Did any of you go to church when you were kids, and they would say, does anybody have a testimony? Do you remember that? And then people would stand up in the church, and they would say things. And some of you may not have seen that. Apparently some of us have. And like sometimes people would say it up, and they would say the same thing every single week, right? And it's like, does Jesus do anything new in your life? And, I mean, of course you never said that because you're respectful, but in your heart you felt that. And but this actually, I just want to take just a moment because I have a testimony, and I'm up front, so I'm just going to do that, all right? I actually really like being a follower of Jesus, and I like it a lot because I see him in so many aspects of life. So like this weekend, I have a funeral, a sermon, and a wedding. Or actually, it's the other way around. I did a wedding, a sermon, and then a funeral. And so I get to see Jesus in all aspects of life. And you know, when I'm talking with a couple and I get to marry a couple, I have so much hope for their marriage that it can last a lifetime and they can navigate absolutely anything because of their faith in Christ. And I'm confident that as they follow the leadership of Jesus, like they will work through whatever life throws their way. And I'm confident in that because it's been true in my life for 19 years. Sherry and I have been married 19 years, so I know it works at least 19 years. But then I look around the church, and I see people who've been married half a century or more, and they did the same thing. They kept their eyes focused on Jesus, and they worked through all kinds of stuff, right? And so that gives me so much confidence in Jesus, and I love being a follower of Christ for that reason. And then later today, I'm going to go do a funeral. Some of you are like, why are you all dressed up? Dude, this isn't normal, so don't get used to it, right? I have a funeral later today. This is called efficiency. I don't like to change clothes a lot. But as we go to that funeral, as I've walked the last few weeks with this individual, Marilyn Dunn, some of you may know her, but as I've walked with her these last few weeks, I've watched her face death with no fear. And this has been something that she's been navigating through for a while, and she looked at death with no fear. And I would ask her multiple times. I've asked this: are you scared? Like death is inevitable. It's right around the corner. We're talking days, and then we're talking hours. Are you scared? And every time her answer was no. No, I'm not. And to me, as a follower of Jesus, I get a lot of confidence in that I can live life well because I have faith in and I'm following the leadership of Jesus. And when life wraps up and when I'm staring death in the eye, I still have no fear because I'm following the leadership of Jesus. And my confidence is in Jesus. And I love being a Christian for that reason. And so that kind of ties into what we want to talk a little bit about today. If you haven't been here, we're doing this series called Making Space. And what we're talking about is the fact that most of us live with very little space in our lives. And so let me just define space. We've been saying that space is the difference between what you can do and what you are currently doing. So if on a scale of 1 to 100, you're capable of doing 100, and you're currently doing 99, you have a space of 1, right? If you're on a scale of 1 to 100, you can do 100, and you're currently doing 50, you have a space of 50, right? And so one of the things we've been saying is that God speaks in the space that we create. And good things happen in the space that we create. You know this, when you're super busy, how's your marriage? When you're super busy, how's your relationship with God? When you're super busy, how's your physical health? When you're super busy, how's your stress levels? The truth is, the less space we have, the more stress we have. And the truth is, if you read any research, if you just read the headlines, one of the things you realize is we live in a stressed out nation. And it's interesting to me that one of God's top 10 commandments was every week we are to take a Sabbath. We're to make space every single week. And the truth is, most of us don't do very well there, do we? And so this whole series is about the urgency and the need and some of the how to make space. And so let me just kick this off like this. Have you ever been in a conversation with or you've been with someone and you felt like you just really couldn't enjoy them because of all the things I've got to do? Got to do. Anybody ever have those things, the got to do's? I got to do this. I got to do that. I got to send that email. I got to check this message, right? I've got to get out of here quick so I can get to my next appointment. I've got to get the kids to school quick, or I've got to get the kids to their game. I've got to do. And we have so many got to do's in our life, and they fill up so much space that it's almost impossible sometimes to enjoy the people that we're with. Now, sometimes I've felt that, right? And probably all of us to some extent have actually felt the got to do's, the weight of the got to do's. And hopefully, like there have been times in my life where I'm in a conversation with someone that I really want to enjoy, but I can hardly bring myself to enjoy it because my mind is just rolling from, I got to do that, I got to do this, I got to do that, I got to do that, I got to do that, and I don't have a lot of space to get it done in. And my hope is, like, the whole time we're talking, I'm like, oh man, I hope they can't see in my body language that I'm filled up with got to do's. You ever have that? Yeah? And you know, sometimes it happens with friends. Sometimes it happens with family, but I think the worst time for me when it comes to the gotta do's is this one right here. Right? Now, if you're a parent, you're going to feel the weight of this, right? I hope you do. I do. I feel the weight of this because there are lots of times where I find myself, and my kids have gotten to a point now where they're actually calling me on it, and therefore I'm actually having to do better because they're like, Dad, put down your phone, and they're so right. Because quite frankly, most of the time what I got to do on my phone, the text I got to answer, the email I'm replying to, or the less important things like Instagram that I'm checking, right? It's not nearly as important as what's in front of me. Or more importantly, who's in front of me. And so I just want to talk with us a little bit about the gotta do's in our life. And let me just throw this question out as we start this conversation this morning. What if my gotta do isn't what I need to do? What if my gotta do isn't what I need to do? Right? Because the truth is, if you stop and think about your life, and by the way, this whole teaching series that we're doing, it really isn't going to make that big a difference in your life if you don't carve out time to actually give it consideration. If you don't carve out time to think about what we're talking about. Remember we said last week that Socrates said, the unexamined life is not worth living. Right? And it's true because if you spend your life just filling up all your space and gotta do, and you never actually sit down and give thought to the life that you're living, at the end of the day, at the end of the month, when you're old, there's going to be a lot of regrets. So I think there's value in examining our lives, especially as we go through this series and have this conversation. All right? And one of the questions we should ask is, what if my gotta do isn't what I need to do? What if all of the things that are filling up the space in my life are not the most important things? What if the things that are filling up in the space in my life right now won't matter a year from now? Won't matter 10 years from now? Won't matter when I'm old? What if the things I'm doing won't matter later? So, let me tell you a story. Jesus was super busy, had lots of opportunities to fill up his space with gotta do's. He was always helping people. He was serving people. He was preaching. He was teaching. He was doing all kinds of good work in the community. And so one day, Jesus and his disciples are traveling, and Luke tells the story. Luke, the apostle, told the story like this. He said, as Jesus and the disciples were going to Jerusalem, they came to a certain village where a woman named Martha welcomed them into her home, all right? So she sees them coming, and this is funny to me. I hope it's funny to you, right? There's Martha, right? And she's like, hey, Jesus, I'm just out all dressed up playing croquet, right? Why don't you come into my house? She welcomes them into her house, all right? Now, keep in mind that word, she welcomed them. So she knew Jesus. They were friends. If you read through the Gospels, one of the things you'll see is that Jesus had a friendship with Mary and Martha and their brother Lazarus. So they knew Jesus. Jesus, come on in. Take a load off and sit down and let's have a good time. Let's engage, all right? So Jesus did. He came on in, all right? Now, Mary, Martha's sister, look what she did. Her sister Mary sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he taught. But Martha was, say this word with me please, distracted by the big dinner she was preparing. Martha was distracted by the big dinner. Now listen, this is a gotta do, right? This is Jesus. He's kind of a big deal, right? He's a celebrity in the local area, and his fame was growing, and he's in the house, and Martha's kind of thinking like, Jesus is in my house. I've just welcomed him. He's my friend. He's in my house. I gotta do this. I gotta do it right. I gotta make sure all the place settings are exactly correct. I gotta make sure the food is exactly right. I gotta make sure there's more than one type of potato salad. I gotta make sure that there's enough forks for everybody. I gotta make sure that there's enough ice in the glasses. I gotta do. And the result was she was distracted by all the gotta do's in her life, while Mary was just sitting in there enjoying fellowship with Jesus. She's just enjoying Jesus. So Martha, as she was doing her gotta-dos in the kitchen, she actually became a little frustrated. Have you ever been in this situation like this where you just, everybody else is out there having a good time and you're in there doing your gotta-dos and you start to get a little frustrated and then a little more frustrated and then a little more you know how that feels, and then you're like, I'm going to go say something. No, I better not say something. It'll be bad. And then and then you just explode and you go out and you say something and it is bad. You ever have that? Yeah, good. Okay, so God bless you. We've all had that. Only one of us was brave enough to say it, right? But look what Martha. So Martha, she's in there doing her gotta-dos. Mary's in there having a good time with Jesus. Finally, Martha gets fed up. She goes out. She came to Jesus and said, Lord, doesn't it seem unfair to you that my sister is just sitting here while I'm in there doing all the work? Tell her to come here and help me. Like, this is ridiculous. I welcomed you into the house, and we welcomed you into our house, and she's just sitting there enjoying it. I'm doing all the work. Now, there's a side of me that wants to say, yeah, Jesus, like, tell Mary to go help. In fact, Jesus, why don't you and the fellows, why don't you guys go in and help too, right? That'd be the right thing to do. But, look, the Lord said to her, my dear Martha, see these two words, you are, what's this? Worried and upset over all these details. Martha, you're so stressed out, worried, upset. And then he said this, and this is really important. There's only one thing worth being concerned about, and Mary has discovered it, and it will not be taken away from her. There's only one thing worth being concerned about. There's only one thing that really matters here, Martha, and Mary gets it. Now, as I read through that story, I see a couple of things. The first thing I see is that there were three words that Jesus used to describe Martha. Look what they are. Distracted, worried, upset. Now, here's the truth. She was doing good things, wasn't she? She was distracted, worried, and upset about good things. I mean, this is Jesus. He's in her house. And what was she doing that caused her to be distracted, worried, and upset? What was she doing? She was making a big dinner for Jesus. Is that a bad thing? Of course not. It's a good thing. And yet it was the good thing that distracted, worried, and upset her. Now let me just stop here for a second. My concern for myself, for my family, for our church, for people in general, is that we're living distracted, worried, and upset, and a lot of times it's not because they're bad things. It's because we have no space. We've filled our space up with so many gotta-dos that they're distracting us. We're anxious. We're stressed. We're frustrated. And we live like this over things that will be taken away. Let me ask you a question. What do you do with the meal after it's been taken away? Don't give me the bad answer. Give me the good answer, right? What do you do with the food after it's done? What do you do with the meal after it's done? You clear it away. It goes away, right? You don't keep it around. It goes away. Here's what I think. After the meal is gone, the relationships remain. So I remember a few weeks ago, this actually just happened just a few weeks ago. my family had a really, really busy weekend. We had a wedding out of town. On that same weekend, one of our daughters passed out, had to go to the emergency room, a full weekend. And on that weekend, my wife's friend, I think I shared this with you guys, right? My wife's friend with a family of 8 decided to drop in. If you don't know, that's 16 people in our house. And we weren't totally ready for it because we had been really busy that weekend. Didn't have a lot of space that weekend. Super, super busy. We're looking at each other. We're like, this is not a great weekend for this to happen. You ever feel that way? Like you've got people coming to see you and you're like, oh, no, I just want to not have this happen this weekend. That's kind of how we felt. And Sherry and I sat down and we finally decided, you know what? They're just gonna have to deal with the fact that we're not ready, right? Like we're not gonna have the best of meals because we haven't prepared. There's gonna be some laundry on the counter because we've been doing laundry to keep up with weddings and all the stuff that's going on. We're just not completely ready. But we choose to have these people in our lives because we think that's what matters. And you know what? They came in, spent 3 days, and we had an incredible time. And you know what? After it's done, you know what we're not talking about? We're not talking about the laundry. We're not talking about the little messes around the house. We're not talking about the fact that we didn't have A-plus meals every meal. You know what we're talking about? We're talking about how much fun we had with the relationships that weekend. And here's all I want to say to you, and I think this is what Jesus is kind of hinting to Martha about. Martha, you're worried about the laundry. You're worried about the quality of the meals. You're worried about all these gotta-dos. And guess what, Martha? In just a week or two, they aren't even going to matter. But what really matters is the people in the room. And so let me just throw this out to you. My concern is that me and all of us at some point in our lives may well be missing the beauty of the people in the room because we're too caught up with the details in the room. There's an incredible verse that comes out of Proverbs 17:1. It says this, better a dry crust eaten in peace than a house filled with feasting and conflict. Is there not incredible wisdom in that? I mean, how many times have we had, listen, let me just ask you this. If I invited you over to my house and you came, you're like, hey, that's cool, we get to hang out with Paul and Sherry and all the ladies. And so you came over to our house, and then the whole time I was in the kitchen, and I'm kind of yelling at Sherry a little bit, babe, we got to get this, that steak, we got to flip this over, we got to get this pan ready, we got to get this dishes set, and the whole time I'm miserable. And when we finally just sit down to eat, the meal is absolutely amazing, but I had been a total knucklehead the whole evening. When you walk away from that, how are you going to feel about your experience? Are you going to talk about me, or are you going to talk about food? All right. But what would happen if we just came over and we just threw some burgers on the grill and we sat on the back deck and we sat there for a couple hours and just laughed and had a good time? What are you going to talk about when we leave? Are you going to talk about the relationship, the good time we had, or are you going to talk about food? Right. My concern is that we spend so much time focusing on the gotta-dos that don't really matter that we miss the things that really do matter. And Jesus told Martha, who was distracted and worried and upset, he said, Martha, you're upset about things. You're worried about things that don't really matter. You're distracted about things that don't really matter. Mary has chosen the right thing. And remember what Mary was doing? Look at this. Mary was sitting at the Lord's feet listening to what he taught. She was having a relationship. She was having a friendship with Jesus. Martha's got to finish, got to get this done. Mary's just like, Jesus is in the room. I'm going to enjoy him. We'll get that other stuff. She chose friendship. She chose relationship. She chose people. So in this process of evaluating our lives and having this conversation about making space, I think it's probably important. On week 1, I asked you to consider 3 evaluative questions. Answering these 3 questions will help us a lot as we think about what is filling up our space. The first question is this. As I look at my life, as I look at my day, as I look at my week, as I look at my month, are the things that are filling up my space, are they making my faith deeper? See, I realize this. A lot of us, we get so busy and we're involved in so many things that at the end of the day, we've done a lot of things, but none of them have actually helped our relationship with God to grow. As you evaluate your life, as you evaluate the space that you have 24 hours, 7 days a week, right? As you evaluate your space and how you're managing your space, I think a great question to ask yourself is my faith deeper because of the way I'm managing my space? Am I giving God time? Am I taking time every day on a regular basis to listen to what He's saying? Am I talking to Him in prayer? Am I taking time for quiet reflection, for worship? Am I taking time to open up His Word and study and listen to what He has to say to me? Is my faith deeper as a result of the way I'm using up my space? Second question we've asked on week 1 was this: are my relationships stronger? As I look back over the course of this week, is my relationship with my wife better? Is my relationship with my kids, with my friends, with my church, with the people that mean anything in my life, are they stronger because of how I've used my space? Or is my relationship with my wife strained because of the way I've used my space? Are my kids hungry for my attention because of the way I've used or not used my space? Are my friends wondering where I'm at? Is God wondering where I'm at because of how I've used my space? Are my relationships stronger? And finally, as we evaluate our lives, the third question I encourage you to ask yourself is this: is my vision clearer? Are the things that God is calling you to do, are you getting closer to actually doing them because of the way you're managing your space? You see, we can live our life like Martha, right? And we can be all consumed with I got to do this, I got to do that, I got to do this, I got to do that. And we can miss the most important thing in the room. And that's Jesus and the people around us. And I would just say to you that my experience has been, and the experience of a lot of people has been, is that when I spend quality time with Jesus, and when I spend quality time nurturing the relationships with the people around me, all of the other gotta-dos actually fall into place. Right? You've heard the story of the man who took a big jar, and he took a bunch of sand, and he took a bunch of big rocks, and he poured all the sand in, and he filled up the jar with sand, and he said, "Is there any room for this in this jar for these big rocks?" Have you heard this story? Right? And all the people looked at me and said, "Absolutely not. There's no room in there. You got a bunch of little things. You got a bunch of gotta-dos in the jar, but now there's no room for the big rocks." He said, "But watch this." So he took and he put all the big rocks in the jar, and he said, "Is there any room for the sand in there?" And the answer is, of course. He poured all the sand right in there, right? And the point is simply this: when we take care of the big things, there's always room for the other little things. And so as we're evaluating our life, as we're evaluating how we manage our space, I want to really encourage you to consider these 3 questions. Is my faith deeper? Are my relationships stronger? Is my vision clearer? Now, every week during this whole teaching series, I've given you an assignment, and today's no different. I want to do a bit of a review, and then this week's assignment, should you choose to accept it. Right? Week 1, the assignment was this: to take some time and ask yourself this: what am I really accomplishing here? At the end of the week, what have I really done with my space? Is my faith deeper? Are my relationships stronger? Is my vision clearer? Or have I just been busy doing gotta-dos all week long? Then last week, I encouraged you to ask this: what do I need to let go of? Are there things in my life that I need to stop doing to make space for the more important things? Are there things that I need to stop doing? I encouraged you to take some time and to go away and to have that conversation with yourself and with God. And this week, I want to ask you a third question to help you consider this idea of making space. And that is this: who do I need to make space for? Who in my life do I need to make space for? Some of you in this room probably would say, if I'm honest with myself, I need to make space for Jesus, because I don't give Him a lot of space in my life. He gets what's left over. He may get a prayer in the car on the way into church, right? Or he may get a shout out while I'm trying to navigate Charlotte traffic, right? And it's not always a good shout out, like Jesus Christ, Jesus Christ, right? Right? Okay, you know what I mean. Like, does He get space in your life? Some of you, He's the one that you need to make space for, right? Some of you need to make space for a spouse or a child or a friend. Some of you need to make space for a corner 4 friend. Who is it that you need to make space for in your life? Now, here's the truth. We talked about this on week 1. Sometimes we cruise through life thinking, well, it's just a busy season. It'll change. It'll change. It'll change. You know what? Unless you take intentional, aggressive effort, it won't change. You'll be saying the same thing to yourself a year from now. It'll change. It'll change. It'll change. until you take the advice of Jesus, and that is this: Mary, Martha, Martha, you're distracted about all these gotta-dos, but only one thing matters. And Mary's discovered it, and it won't be taken from her. Until you make an intentional decision to make that decision, you're going to be repeating the same frustrating cycle. We've all got things that we got to do, but here's the question. What if my got to do isn't really what I need to do? And I think about this, and I think about if our church, if in this room, if every single one of us would begin to make space for the things that we need to do. Making space for Jesus, making space for significant relationships in our life, making space for people to love and care for them well. Imagine what could happen in this church if we made space to care for one another, if we made space in our lives to serve one another, if we made space to pick up the phone and call someone that we haven't seen in a while, if we made space to care. You know, what's interesting for me is that these are the things that won't be taken away. 10 years from now, we'll remember that someone made space in their lives for us. Now today, this afternoon, I'm going to go do a funeral of Marilyn Dunn. And as I have spent time with her, the thing that occurred to me is that when you're dying, there are really only two things that matter. Your relationship with Jesus and your relationship with your family. Those are really the only two things that matter when you're dying. And I think sometimes now who of us in this room has spent any time this week thinking about dying? Most of us don't, because we're busy with our gotta do's. I gotta do. But I promise there are people that the closer they get to the end of their life, the more they think. And a lot of people, quite frankly, have regrets because they didn't spend time thinking more deeply about the most important thing, Jesus and relationships. And so my question to you again is this: who do you need to make space for in your life? And you can start it this week. This is a big one. So what I want to do is we're going to call on our team to come up, and they're going to help us to, we're going to have a quiet talk with Jesus, and they're going to sing a song, and we talked about it a little earlier, is when we call out to Jesus. And so let's just get ready for them. Father, I just want to say a big thank you because you're available to us. All we have to do is call out to you, and the song we're going to sing says, you reply. The truth is, God, so many of us live our lives so busy. There's not a lot of space for you in our lives. There's not a lot of space for the important people in our lives because it's filled up with gotta-dos. But maybe today, Lord, we can just take just a few moments and stop and evaluate and realize that maybe our gotta-dos aren't what we necessarily need to do. I pray, Father, as we think about these things, that you would give us the courage to make some tough decisions so that we can make space, Lord, for the most important people in our life, starting with you, Jesus. Every day giving time and space to you, and every day giving time and space to the people that matter most in our life. Jesus, you said this to Martha. Martha, you're worried, you're distracted, you're upset about all of these details. But Mary's found the one thing that matters most, and that is Jesus. And the important people in our lives, the relationships in our lives. God, would you give us courage to evaluate, make decisions that will matter 10 years from now, 20 years from now, when we're facing death. This is our prayer, Father, in Jesus' name.